Secretary Herman and Assistant Secretary Jeffress, along with all the other program participants, will be available for stand-ups interviews immediately following this announcement. So see Bonnie Friedman, who's right there, to coordinate any of those requests. I'm going to turn the program over to Charles Jeffress, the Assistant Secretary of Labor for Occupational Safety and Health. He's going to provide an overview of the new standard and introduce the other speakers. Again, thank you and welcome.
Good morning. Thank you for coming. Today, OSHA is proposing an ergonomics program standard. This standard is intended to protect workers from musculoskeletal disorders, or MSDs as they're more commonly known. We are compelled to act. Employees are getting hurt, workers are being sent home, people are suffering. It's time for OSHA to move on. This is the most flexible standard that OSHA has ever proposed. It recognizes that one size does not fit all. It includes options to make it easy for employers to comply. Our bottom line is this: when more than 600,000 American workers have to take time off to recover from MSDs, and over 1 million more experience less serious MSD problems at work, we know that we have a national problem. The good news is we know how to fix these problems, and we know that fixing them will actually save money. This standard will prevent an average of 300,000 work-related MSDs each year, and it will generate $9 billion every year in savings to American employers. Here's how it will work. The primary focus of this proposal is on two types of jobs: production jobs in manufacturing and jobs involving manual lifting, such as moving boxes in a warehouse or lifting patients in a nursing home. We are here focusing because that's where most MSDs occur. In these two areas, employers will have to put a limited ergonomics program in place right away when this standard becomes final. The majority of employers, however, fully 75% of all employers, will be covered only if one of their employees suffers an MSD. That is, 3/4 of employers will have no requirements under this standard unless a documented work-related musculoskeletal disorder occurs in their workplace. That's because injuries are concentrated in manufacturing and manual handling operations. For example, others that will be covered should an injury occur: grocery store worker, cashiers who do the scanning across the checkout counter, individuals doing intensive computer work, keyboard work, people sorting mail. These kinds of jobs will be covered if a musculoskeletal disorder occurs in the workplace. This is how employers with effective ergonomics programs have told us that they handle ergonomics in their workplace. Zero in on the high risks first, and then cover other jobs as problems occur. 3 industries, construction, agriculture, and maritime, are not covered by this proposal today. We will address them at a later time. I mentioned that this is the most flexible standard that OSHA has ever adopted or opposed at this stage. We've given employers many different options: a quick fix to fix problems quickly, a grandfather clause, or perhaps grandparent clause today, extended compliance states, limited record keeping. Most employers will find the principles involved in these programs simple. If they've already taken steps to address MSDs, they'll be in good shape to meet these requirements. To ensure that employees report MSDs early and catch them before the problems get worse, we've included what we're calling work restriction protection in this proposal. All too often, we've found that employees are reluctant to report their injuries because they fear they will lose their jobs or be put in lower paying positions. With work restriction protection, employees will receive 100% of their pay and benefits if they get transferred to light duty, and 90% of their pay and 100% of their benefits if they have to leave the job because of their injury. If work-related MSDs do occur, employers will need to correct the problem job in which the injury occurred and jobs like it but not all the jobs at the work site, just those jobs where there are problems. OSHA standard is job-based, so employers will only need to fix jobs where injuries have actually occurred. And employers will have two options, a quick fix or a full ergonomics program. Quick fix is a unique aspect of this standard. It's for jobs that can be fixed within 90 days. The solutions are usually simple, they're obvious, relatively inexpensive. If the quick fix fixes the job and there are no reports of further injuries 30 days later, then an employer does not have to implement a full ergonomics program. A full program would be needed for more complex problems. And according to this proposal, the program will have to include 6 steps that each employer with problems will have to address. First, management leadership and employee participation. Second, hazard information and reporting, a reporting mechanism for people to report their problems. Third, job hazard analysis and control, analyze what's causing the problems and fix it. Fourth, training of employees and supervisors and managers in the workplace about ergonomics and what MSD signs and symptoms are and what to look for and how to fix them. Fifth, MSD management, which includes taking care of the injured worker. And sixth, an evaluation of the program. As I mentioned, our proposal also includes a grandfather clause, the first OSHA proposal ever to include a grandfather clause. If employers have effective programs in place today, or if they put them in place in the next year before the effective date of this standard, then they will not have to modify their programs to comply with this standard. We know that ergonomics programs are an effective strategy for reducing MSDs. Extensive scientific research, including from NIOSH, National Institute of Occupational Safety and Health, research published 2 years ago, studying 600 different studies that showed ergonomics programs work. From the Government Accounting Office, the U.S. Congress, documenting that ergonomics programs works. And from the National Academy of Sciences, the most respected academic scientific organization in the country today, issued a report last year showing that ergonomics programs work, that there are real solutions to these real problems that people face. The science is in, they prove that ergonomics programs work, our own experience proves that these programs will work, and these programs are the best way to prevent injuries. Our proposal will appear in the Federal Register tomorrow. Copies of the text are available in the packets that you have in front of you, and the full document will be available on our website, www.osha.gov. Written comments on our proposal are due by February 1st, and they may be submitted by email around the country. If people want to participate in the rulemaking, they can send us electronically their comments and their responses. We will have formal public hearings around the country beginning in February. It's now my pleasure to introduce to you Dr. Guy Fragalla, who is the Director of Environmental Health and Safety at the University of Massachusetts Medical Center in Worcester, Massachusetts. And he's here to tell us about the success of the ergonomics program at his medical center and his research. Dr. Fragalla.
Thank you very much. I'm very pleased to be here this morning to talk about ergonomics because I've been involved with ergonomics for my entire professional career. I'm very happy to see a lot of attention coming into this area because now my mother finally knows what I do for a living. She used to think I was involved with economics. But there is a lot of value that ergonomic offers, and I've seen a lot of this value at our institution, and I'd like to tell you some of the positives that we've had. Back in the mid-'80s, we began looking at our injury rates and saw that nurses were suffering a lot of back injuries. So we said, what can we do about this? Because the traditional programs we were using, such as teaching people how to lift, really wasn't working. So we began by analyzing jobs. And as we analyzed these jobs, we got a lot of people involved. We involved workers, supervisors, or occupational health people, and we saw certain parts of these jobs that we thought we could change. Some of these changes were relatively simple. For example, when we wanted to get a patient from a bed to a stretcher, we began using sliding boards that reduced friction, and it made it much easier for the nurses to get that patient across to the stretcher, a simple, low-cost solution. We put these programs in place, and we did see a reduction in nursing back injuries. A couple of years later, we expanded our program. We began looking at our workstations throughout the medical center. We had a lot of workstations. We began doing training with employees, teaching them how to analyze problems at their own workstations. They were able to make some simple adjustments. We taught them how to make adjustments, how to set up their workplace. And again, we saw a reduction in injuries, more satisfied employees, higher morale. There was a lot that was gained from that. When we looked at our nursing back injuries in 1996, we found that only a low percentage of our workers' comp dollars were being spent in this area. Further, the medical center has taken this knowledge of ergonomics through our occupational health program. We've worked with a lot of industry in the area through our outreach programs, training employees, working with them on developing programs, and people who have embraced these concepts have seen a lot of success. They've seen a lot of good things happening. So again, there is a lot of value to ergonomics. Right now, my hospital has just entered into a merger with another hospital in the community, and just last week we had a meeting on reducing occupational injuries. It was great to hear people talking about ergonomics, how we're going to use ergonomics to further reduce injuries. Ergonomics has been very important to us at the University of Massachusetts. It will continue to be important. I think ergonomics is going to be very, very important to everyone in American industry. So everyone, let's get excited about ergonomics. There's a lot of good things that can be done with these types of programs. Thank you.
Thank you, Gala. From the experience of someone who's taking a program and making it work in a difficult setting where people are having to do lifting of patients, awkward postures, excessive force, but there are things that can be done, and Dr. Fagala has proven that at the University of Massachusetts Medical Center. Next, who has joined us is Walter Frazier. Walt is here to tell us about his own experience with MSDs during 9 years of his work in poultry processing. He knows personally about the damage and the pain that repetitive motion at work can cause, as he's worked at a chicken hanger in the poultry industry. Mr. Frazier.
Good morning to you ladies and gentlemen. My name is Walter Frazier. I'm here to talk to you today about working in the poultry plant and what it can do to a man or a woman. For nearly 9 years, I worked hanging chickens at a poultry plant in Harbison, Delaware. And because of that work, I had many severe injuries to my hand. I'm here to describe to you how we hang these chickens. Before we hang these chickens, they are hauled in from trucks. And the forklift driver takes them off and take the cages and dump them on the conveyor belt. And after that, they'll run onto the belt where we have a foot pallet, which the live hangers hang from. And as we hang these birds, these are shackles that we hang these chicken feet in. And I hang 26 birds a minute into these shackles. And this is an 8-hour workforce each day that I hang these chickens on these shackles. And as I hang these shackles, I have much pain in my hands and in my shoulders from hitting these shackles with my hands. I felt my pains shortly after I began to work at the plant, and over years my pain has gotten worse. I couldn't lift 20 pounds, and I couldn't do many chores at home or even lift my granddaughter. Finally, I did what my doctor said, and at first, I had 3 surgeries to try to fix my damaged hands. I also had back pain and arthritis in my hands and my shoulders. Part of my day, I go to therapy trying to get back my hand movement and strengthen my hands. I'm not able to work as a live hanger anymore. I weigh gizzards. I suffer more than just pain. I lost pay. I was out of work nearly 7 months for my injuries. I can't do my job anymore, and I'm angry about that. And my whole life away from work has been changed, and not for better. I'm a different man today. When I went into the chicken plant, I'm not alone. Everyone who's a live hanger at the plant has the same problems. We all have this damaged bodies. We hurt like hell, and we all will. So I speak to the press today that I'm not the same. And I say that hanging these shackles and doing this kind of job is really a hard job. And I say I thank you for me standing up here to speak to you about my injuries, because when I was going through therapy and stuff, I didn't have no hand strength. I didn't have no motion in my hands or movement like I want. So I had to go through a whole lot of therapy to even get the use of my hands that I have now. So I just thank the opportunity to stand before you to tell you my story and to speak for all the other line hangers that's going through this same problem right now that I'm going through, and the back pains that I have from this and the shoulder pains that I have from this, doing this such a repetitive job that I'm doing. Thank you, and have a good day.
Thank you, Walt. Real person, the real problem. And there are real solutions. And the poultry industry is putting some of them in place today. We know that others can do it as well. Our next speaker, Beth Picnic, a registered nurse in settings of lifting patients, moving patients, struggling with patients. She's no longer able to care for patients because of the injuries she's received. A back injury that could have been prevented cut short her career in healthcare nursing. Beth, come tell us your story.
Good morning. I wasn't sure I was going to get here this morning. I took a detour via Virginia. Good morning. My name is Beth Picnic, and I'm a registered nurse and member of the Massachusetts Nurses Association. I'm here today representing the American Nurses Association and the 2.6 million registered nurses in this country to voice our strong support for OSHA's ergonomic standard. I am also here today because while working as an intensive care unit nurse, I suffered a career-ending back injury that was devastating, both personally and professionally. And this injury was preventable. I am determined to make sure that what happened to me does not happen to other healthcare workers. This standard is a step toward that goal. Moving patients from their beds to chairs and vice versa was one of many lifting maneuvers I performed throughout my career. I would twist, bend, pull, and push. It was part of the job. I never had any back problems, but on February 17, 1992, while leaning over a patient to move him, I severely injured my back. I went to physicians, surgeons, and physical therapists determined to get back to work, but I remained in pain. During the 2 years after the injury, I had spinal fusion surgery, which involved major rehabilitation before and after the surgery. I was willing to go through whatever I had to, but my major goal was to get back to the job I loved, which was taking care of critically ill patients and their families. But after the surgery and physical therapy, that still remains possible. I am finally somewhat I can be pain-free, but I have to work hard to remain that way. I cannot stand for long periods of time without support. I can only sit in certain chairs. I cannot lift or do any repetitive bending or twisting motions. Before my injury, I was an active person who enjoyed bicycling, competitive racquetball, water skiing, and yearly whitewater rafting trips with my family, all of which I can no longer do. Due to the injury, I have been relegated to a light-duty job performing tuberculosis surveillance activities for our employee health department. This is not why I became a nurse. I became a nurse to take care of patients. My identity has been based on being a nurse in the intensive care unit. The inability, which I did for 21 years, by the way, the inability to care for patients was devastating and sent me into 4.5 years of clinical depression. My family has had to cope with both my physical and psychological problems. It was horrendous. And 7 years later, I am just beginning to adjust. One of the worst moments in this whole experience was when I learned that my injury could have been prevented. I, like most nurses, assumed that lifting was just part of the job. At the time of my injury, I did not know that there were lifting devices commercially available and that my hospital simply chose not to have them. My hospital is only now starting to implement the use of lifting devices. Healthcare workers continue to face an increasingly hazardous work environment. While caring for others, we put our health and sometimes our lives at risk. This cannot continue. With this standard, healthcare facilities will have to develop back injury prevention programs that will involve frontline healthcare workers. Engineering controls like lifting devices must be the primary means of prevention. Single-person lifts without assistive staff or devices should be eliminated, which means hospitals will have to ensure adequate staffing. By protecting workers from injury, healthcare facilities can also invest in retaining a cadre of experienced, healthy nurses, which is particularly important in this time of increasing nursing shortages. If this standard had been in place in 1992, I would still be living the active life that I love. I would be able to stand and have a conversation without pain. I would still be doing what I love, taking care of my patients. Thank you. Okay, now I would like to introduce a true champion of workers, someone who understands the hopes and fears of working people, someone who cares deeply about their pain, someone who is committed to preserving their health, someone who is tireless in her support for working men and women. Alexis Herman, Secretary of Labor.
Good morning. First of all, let me thank you, Beth Picnic, for your introduction, but we want to thank both you and Walter Frazier for being with us today. But I especially want to thank you today for sharing your stories and for having the courage to come forward. While we cannot undo the pain that you have suffered, we can certainly take steps, and we are doing just that here today, to prevent others from experiencing the same types of injuries, the injuries that have so radically and dramatically changed your lives. Certainly ensuring healthy and safe workplaces is one of my top priorities as Secretary of Labor. And indeed, for me, developing an ergo standard has been at the top of that list. I first came to develop an understanding and an appreciation for this issue literally more than 20 years ago, when I first came to the Department of Labor as the Director of the Women's Bureau. And I had, as a part of that experience, the opportunity to travel to the state of Mississippi and to see firsthand for myself women primarily who were working in poultry facilities. I saw firsthand, as I had as a social worker, their hands that were maimed, fingers cutting off, the inability to have any motion at all. And I can remember being asked then, isn't there something that we can do about this? Well, today, we are answering that question because the fact of the matter is, work-related musculoskeletal disorders, or MSDs as they are most commonly called, are the most prevalent, the most expensive, and the most preventable workplace injuries in the country. And it is time that we did something about them. Although most employers take seriously their obligations to maintain healthy workplaces, when employees are hurt on the job, employers have a responsibility to act. And this is why the proposed ergonomic standard isn't just about another rule or another regulation. It is about helping real people suffering from real problems, problems like back injuries and carpal tunnel syndrome, tendinitis, not minor aches or pains, but serious, life-altering injuries. There are more than 100 medically recognized MSDs today. And each day in the workplace, more than 4,900 Americans will experience one of these injuries. And more than 1,600 of them will have to stay home to recover. And almost 4,000 Americans will miss work today due to potentially painfully disabling MSDs. More than 1/3 of the most critical on-the-job injuries are the result of overexertion or repetitive motion. And because many women work in the jobs where these kinds of injuries occur, jobs like nurses' aides, cashiers, and garment workers, poultry workers, the issue of MSDs in particular holds special relevance for women. MSDs are painful to workers and costly to employers. But as Dr. Fagala has so ably demonstrated here today, and we thank you for being with us today, Dr. Fagala, and for reminding us that there are solutions. And many of them are used today across the country by employers who have successful ergonomics programs. And these programs not only benefit their employees, but they also benefit their respective bottom lines. The principles of prevention are simple and easy to put in practice. Reduce physical force, decrease repetitive motion, using lifting devices or reducing loads. These ergonomic standards that we are proposing today truly are focused especially on high-risk jobs in general industry where solutions are well understood, as Charles Jeffress has already pointed out to us. And this proposed standard is flexible, and that is important because we recognize that this is not a one-size-fits-all solution. It reflects the best practices in the industry today, and it clearly offers a framework for employers to adopt well-accepted principles to fit their specific workplaces. Today, we begin a long-awaited process of protecting workers from these disabling disorders. My friends, this is the right thing to do. This is the smart thing to do, because good ergonomics is also good economics. I look forward in the weeks and months ahead to consulting with the many stakeholders that we will listen to as a part of this process as we propose now to develop the final standard. Thank you very much.